Good afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Strand. Today is June 23rd, 2021. It is 12:03 p.m. I'm the chair of the Capital Long Range Improvements Committee. Before we begin, I'd like to note this meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota statutes, section 13D.021, due to the declared local health pandemic. I will now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum.
Thorbjorn Adam. Zachariah Aiden.
Present.
Jonathan Ahn.
Present.
Jocelyn Beard.
Present.
John Bernstein.
Here.
Steve Brandt.
Here.
James Brown. James Brown. Luke Cunningham.
Here.
Scott Engel.
Here.
Amity Foster.
Here.
Eamon Gallagher. Eamon Gallagher. Bill Graves.
Here.
Kai Goodmanstead. Kai Goodmanstead. William Gullickson. William Gullickson. Risa Husted.
Here.
Katie Jones.
Here.
Matt Kazinka.
Here.
Richard LaRoe. Erica Mouter.
Here.
Dan McConnell.
Here.
Jake McCormick.
Here.
Dan Miller.
Here.
George Montague.
Here.
Beth Toso.
Here.
Todd Schumann.
Here.
Katrina Stratton.
Here.
Eric Wan.
Here.
Vice Chair Willie Bridges.
Here.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Present.
There are 23 members present. The clerk would note that Thorbjorn Adam is going to be a little late to the meeting, and Rich did let us know in advance that he would not be here.
Thank you. Next items we have been taking together. And so we have adoption of the agenda as proposed and acceptance of the minutes from June 16, 2021. I would ask for a motion from a member of CLIC to adopt both items. And please state your name when making the motion and do likewise when stating a second to the motion. Is there anyone who wishes to move the agenda and approval of minutes? Any
So
hands?
moved. Katie.
Katie?
Second.
Katie moved. Willie second. Discussion? Any discussion? Not seeing any discussion. The clerk will call the roll for adoption.
Thorbjorn Adam. Zachariah Aiden. Zachariah Aiden.
Aye.
Jonathan Ahn.
Aye.
Jocelyn Beard.
Aye.
John Bernstein.
Aye.
Steve Brandt.
Aye.
James Brown. Luke Cunningham.
Aye.
Scott Engel.
Aye.
Amity Foster.
Aye.
Eamon Gallagher. Bill Graves.
Aye.
Kai Goodmanstead. William Gullickson. Risa Husted.
Aye.
Katie Jones.
Aye.
Matt Kazinka.
Aye.
Erica Mouter.
Aye.
Dan McConnell.
Aye.
Jake McCormick.
Aye.
Dan Miller.
Aye.
George Montague.
Aye.
Beth Toso.
Aye.
Todd Schumann.
Aye.
Katrina Stratton.
Aye.
Eric Wan.
Aye.
Vice Chair Willie Bridges.
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Voting aye.
There are 23 ayes.
Motion is adopted. We now have the agenda. Item 4. So as per the agenda, we have the have this time blocked, 12:15 to 12:30, 15 minutes, because this is our second to last regular CLIC meeting that is scheduled. So we had 2 comments that were laid over for action at the last meeting. One from member Eric Wan and one from member Katrina Stratton. And I understood that executive committee member Katie Jones was going to work with Katrina on that. So the agenda provides for us to take up those 2 items. Anything new will be pushed to 1:45 p.m. at number 6. So will the clerk start us with the Eric Wan item that was brought forth last meeting and the member agreed to defer it, lay it over for action today?
Sure, and then I can just read through it.
Sure.
The general comment on monitoring and accountability. CLIC believes that performance monitoring and accountability are key success factors in municipal capital infrastructure projects. Accountability is maintained through a system of financial and program controls to ensure that projects are managed within allocated budgets and are completed within agreed upon timeframes. Where cost overruns are anticipated, corrective actions may be taken to ensure that financial controls are in place into the future. CLIC also continues to believe that performance and impact measures are critical to ensure that capital investments are achieving promised outcomes. CLIC encourages the city to adopt a public-facing project management system, including a set of dashboards, which will create transparency and allow residents and businesses to monitor progress that is being made in each city capital project. Where projects are delayed, lowered in priority, or eliminated from the queue, a dashboard would keep residents informed about projects that directly affect them and their communities. And comment.
Okay, so is there a motion to take some action? Motion to approve, for example?
I make a motion to approve. This is Willie
Please
Bridges.
raise your hands, members.
Katie, second.
Okay, I guess I didn't hear the audio. Was that Eric moved? Or who's Eric moved?
Willie moved it.
I moved it and
Willie
Katie
moved.
seconded, Jeff.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any discussion? I'm remoting in from central northern Minnesota, so I'm not seeing the hands indicated. So if there's no discussion, clerk can call a roll on approval, on adoption.
Thorbjorn Adam. Zachariah Aiden.
Aye.
Jonathan Ahn.
Aye.
Jocelyn Beard.
Aye.
John Bernstein.
Aye.
Steve Brandt.
Aye.
Luke Cunningham.
Aye.
Scott Engel.
Aye.
Amity Foster.
Aye.
Bill Graves.
Aye.
Risa Husted.
Aye.
Katie Jones.
Aye.
Matt Kazinka.
Aye.
Erica Mauter.
Aye.
Tim McConnell.
Aye.
Jake McCormick.
Aye.
Dan Miller.
Aye.
George Montague.
Aye.
Beth Toso.
Aye.
Todd Schumann.
Aye.
Katrina Stratton.
Aye.
Eric Wan.
Abstain.
Vice Chair Willie Bridges.
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Aye.
Any members now present that I didn't call? Hearing none, there are 22 ayes, 1 abstention.
That is adopted and will be included in the report. Next comment.
So I believe these are the 2 comments on climate change. Do you want me to read through both of them? Because it's from what I remember, I think there were.
No, I would like to ask the members. I understood that member Katie Jones and member Katrina Stratton were working on this, and so can the affected members enlighten the committee on what is the intention?
Yes, so I'm happy to talk about that. So based on the conversation from last time, we took this back and revised it a bit. So really the language being brought forward here is the shorter one from 622, and it is one that Katrina and I agreed upon.
So would you move that and then Katrina
Yes.
second it, or
So moved.
I
is there a
second.
Okay, so we moved and second, properly moved and seconded. Makers want to comment further? Katrina?
Could I ask the comment be read since some
Oh,
of
yes.
us don't have access to the screen?
Sorry.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Sorry,
General
Steve.
comment. General comment on climate change. Click notes that language of the capital budget request, CBRs, is intended to reflect the values of the city. Given that the city has declared a climate emergency via resolution number 2019 R-422, we recommend that the language of the CBRs and intention of the projects reflect the urgency of such resolutions. And comment.
Thank you, Clerk. Katie spoke to it. Katrina, you were the author. Did you want to speak to it briefly?
No, I don't need to.
Jeff, my hand is
Okay,
up.
thank you. Then I recognize John Bernstein.
So I'm voting no on this. I have several issues with it. The first is, in my view, this is not offered in good faith. There was a comment previously on, I think it's PSD 24, the solar panels, that a group of us were involved in rewriting that removed this kind of language from that comment, and now it's being reintroduced again as a separate comment. So that I just don't think that's right. Separate from that, I just don't agree with the comment. The first sentence, I don't think that's.
Thank you.
Uh,
Are there any other comments?
Jeff, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm not done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
I
okay.
can hear you.
The language of the first sentence, this idea that the language of capital budget requests is intended to reflect the values of the city, I just don't think that's accurate. It's an internal document. The capital budget request certainly should reflect the values of the city, but this is just highly prescriptive. We've never done this. I don't see any reason to start doing it. I don't see any reason to pick out this one thing versus any of the other long list of deficiencies in CBRs and the way they're filled out, whether it's data or language. I find this inappropriate, regardless of your view on climate change, which this in no way has anything to do with my own personal view on climate change. Thanks.
Very good. Are there any other questions or comments on this proposed comment? I see John's hands, but I'm anticipating he spoke. It's down. I see no other hands, so the clerk will call. All right, George Montague.
Jeff, no one's hands up.
George's is.
Oh, it's not showing up. That's all.
Yep, I was
You'll
trying
have
to
to
get.
unmute.
And so, hi, I just have a question, which is, I went back to the guidelines, and the guidelines does have us reflect the values, but there's actually not reference to this in the values that we're supposed to incorporate. So I'm not sure of the protocol, but it seems like if this is something that we should incorporate in the future, specifically include in future evaluations, perhaps, by including them in the values is the way to do that. And I'm not sure how we go about doing that, right? Or even if that's within our purview. So maybe you can just clarify the protocol or the process for that.
Thank you, George. That was a comment. You didn't have any amendment, correct?
No, it is a kind of a question regarding the process, right? Because we have value. This makes reference to this being one of the city's values. But there are values that we are asked to consider as part of the evaluation, and this isn't mentioned in those values, right? I'm referring to the values that are listed in the CLIC guidelines.
Correct.
Right, they're equity,
Very
safety,
good, thank you.
small living, stewardship, yeah. So.
Mhm. Okay, are there any other comments or questions? Last call. I'm not seeing any new hands, so the clerk will call a roll, please.
Thorburn Adam. Zachariah Aiden. Zachariah Aiden.
Aye.
Jonathan Ahn.
Aye.
Jocelyn Beard.
Aye.
John Bernstein.
No.
Lee Brandt.
Aye.
Luke Cunningham.
Aye.
Scott Engel.
Aye.
Amity Foster.
Aye.
Bill Graves.
Aye.
Risa Husted.
Aye.
Katie Jones.
Abstain.
Matt Kazinka,
Aye.
Erica Mouter,
Aye.
Dan McConnell. Dan McConnell. Jake McCormick,
Aye.
Dan Miller,
Aye.
George Montague,
Aye.
Beth Toso,
Abstain.
Todd Schumann,
Aye.
Katrina Stratton,
Abstain.
Eric Wan,
Aye.
Vice Chair Willie Bridges,
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Aye.
Are there any members who weren't called who want to vote? Hearing none, there are 18 ayes, 1 nay, 3 abstentions.
Clerk, my audio cut out, but I heard 18 ayes, which would be a majority.
Correct.
George, do you have further questions?
No, sorry about
Okay.
that.
Moving the agenda. So we're 10 minutes ahead of schedule. Further new comments will be heard at 1:45 p.m., subject to any change by the body. So then the next item, agenda item 5, net debt bonds, 2022-2027 funding programming. As chair, I'd asked the staff to come up with a number, ranking number where we typically start. And in the past, the former executive director would typically come in, executive secretary that is, would come in with the recommendation. Understand that staff recommendations, we are the members appointed by the mayor and the council members. So staff are, paid professional staff of the city. I highly respect their professional expertise. I'll take responsibility. The executive committee was not in complete agreement on giving you this outline because I want to note that you should take this as staff recommendation. CLIC is not bound to take this advice. It can just pick its own number to start and we can work through the process. So that's said, I appreciate our executive secretary and the finance and property services staff for putting this together. So we have a very short presentation, if you will, 10 minutes. And then we will certainly allow any further statements from CLIC members. So I don't want to belabor this further. The intent was that this comes as recommendation, but CLIC members should feel completely free to accept, reject, or change this professional staff recommendation. So Robert?
Yep. Okay. So I think where we left off last week, we were looking at, at a very high level recommended cutoff score of 158. Staff are returning today to recommend adjusting that cutoff score upward to 164. And this allows us to do a couple of things. It allows CLIC to essentially anticipate some of the decisions that the city will have to make about ongoing projects. So we have some projects that are going into the ground right now. These projects were either recommended by CLIC, recommended by the mayor's office, or I think in rarer cases, recommended by council. And these are projects that might not have actually elevated all the way up to the top of the scoring process this year, but for various reasons, either due to past recommendations and scoring by CLIC, recommendation by the mayor's office or council. These projects are going into the ground and are likely to use up resources in 2022 through 2027. We kind of know these projects are going forward and it's unlikely that they just be stopped. So we've incorporated those into this programming picture that we're looking at to see how much resources those are likely to consume based on what departments came forward with this year. That does eat up some resources, and so it kind of forces a slightly higher threshold on the CLIC score cutoff. And so using that methodology, we're recommending a scoring cutoff of 164 points. I can't quite recall last year's scoring cutoff, but I think it was, by coincidence, somewhat similar to that. 164 as a scoring cutoff overall, just looking at all of our net debt bonding resources, puts Click slightly over in the near years on net debt bond funding, under in 2024. On average, it really accomplishes, I think, a lot of goals of trying to have a balanced net debt bonding program, so we don't have, all $300 million of programming in the first year and then nothing in the out years, which would not actually be affordable. And in total, it puts the Click recommendation at maybe $292,000 over it. It's just a really, really small amount there. In order to make sure that the net debt bonding recommendation works and we don't have a lot of front loading, staff are also recommending either identifying and going with the projects that we've called out for delays or replacing those with other projects that could be conceivably delayed. One of those projects that we identified as a potential candidate just based on how the project has gone, scoring and other considerations is the MPD First Police Precinct project, which was included for funding last year, but is under on the scoring and is a significant net debt bonding request. So we're recommending, if Click decides to go with this recommendation, bumping that project back, as well as a couple of streets projects, PV 132 and PV 137. We would recommend bumping those projects back as well. And then we made 2 additional adjustments, which if Click decides to hold with, they would go through. Otherwise, Click can certainly amend or replace these projects. But we would recommend, based on last year's recommendation, that the farmers market improvements projects be excluded from funding. Based on the fact that it wasn't recommended last year, it does perform better this year, but it's essentially coming in with another request for funding. And I think the idea is that if this were included this year, maybe find another project to remove from the CIP so that we don't go over our net debt bonding levels. And we're also recommending excluding the PSD 24 project. And really, this one should just be stricken based purely on technical matters. This project is no longer needed. The funding for this project is no longer needed. We have an alternate method for delivering the project that doesn't utilize net debt bonding. And so that's what we see. We see a slightly higher cutoff score based entirely on the fact that we have some projects that are going in, and this cutoff score enables us to deliver on a net debt bonding program that doesn't oversubscribe to our bonding resources that are available. It gets us close to a fully funded streets funding plan based on what was actually requested this year, which was a little bit low. And it presents, I think, some additional considerations for Click that are probably in line with what we've seen in past years in terms of what's funded and what's not funded by each of the programs. For example, many but not all bike ped projects are being funded using this cutoff. Some, but certainly not all bridge projects are being funded using this cutoff. And then I think, as we've seen in the past, the public grounds and facilities projects do not perform quite as highly using this cutoff score, but given the fact that a number of them are actually going in right now, we'd understand that some of the newer projects would be the ones that are unlikely to be funded in this scenario. If there's an additional way I can present this information or additional detail for the record, I can kind of go through one by one, but just keeping an eye on the time and trying to understand what we're recommending. I realize I'm really just ripping through this right now, but I can open the discussion. Yeah.
Thank you, Robert. Robert, thank you for presenting that so succinctly. We do have 4 questions or comments, and I saw the hands come in. Eric, Katie, John, and Dan. Eric, Katie, John, and Dan.
Okay, thank you, Robert. So I notice here that the Northside Greenway, if it's in red, it means you're proposing to drop it. Is that correct?
Yes, so it in red means it's below the scoring cutoff. So North Side Greenway is 157.8 points. The cutoff of 164 excludes it. It wasn't included for funding last year, and so it's not an ongoing project. So it's also not included on that basis as well. The funding request for this year was for about $7.5 million in 2026.
Okay, I just like to point out that what you shared with us last week in terms of the equity matrix, that scored very, very high.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe there's a reason for it. It's because the north side does not have the amenities that the rest of the city does. And this was a very important element in finishing part of the Greenway that would have helped North Minneapolis be integrated with the rest of the city. I'd like to argue that is a very important issue at this time in our history. I think that something for the north side should be considered, especially if it scored so high in the equity matrix. So that's all.
Eric, I 100% agree with you. And I'm wondering if we can maybe take a step back. And sorry, Jeff, if I'm cutting in here. I know I was next. But would it be helpful? I mean, given that, you know, this is a staff recommendation, could we almost move through the staff recommendations one at a time and kind of approve, or like at least get a thumbs up approval? Maybe not do a voice vote, but just to make sure that we are okay with each piece of staff's recommendation, and then get to these pieces, because we may realize that some of these projects that we do want to keep in might just continue being in there if we don't agree with the staff recommendation.
Let's see what the other two comments or questions are here, and then, because this is basically covering the staff report recommendation. John and then Dan.
Thanks. So I'll try to be reasonably brief here. I want to start by just sort of, these are my opinions, but it's based on long experience on the committee. I think it's important to draw a distinction between our role and the role of the finance staff. We are completely advisory, as I'm sure most of you know. The reality is elected officials follow our recommendations at a fairly high percentage, not as high as they like to claim, but they don't have to follow them at all if they don't want to. That gives us the freedom to do things a little different. Staff, it would be job suicide for them to tell elected officials to stop funding something midway through a project if they started doing that on a regular basis. We don't have that handcuff, and not that we want to start doing that left and right, but one of the things I think we do for the most part is what people call zero-based budgeting each year. We just look at everything from the ground up and see what rises to the top. And there's a lot of value in that, especially when we're just advisory, right? It gives the city a fresh look every year, and it doesn't say, well, we're already underway on these projects, so we have to keep funding them. We're just going to put them in. Now, you know, we got to be practical about this. We can't keep telling them to stop building a bridge when it's halfway across the river. But at the same time, if there's a project that didn't turn out the way they said it was going to turn out, or it's just fallen in priority because there's higher priorities, I think it's good for us to point that out. And sometimes the way to point that out to grab attention is to not fund it. That doesn't mean they're not going to actually not fund it. It draws their attention to there's something that might be fixable or a lesson that can be learned for the future. So having said all of that, I think we need to be careful, and not to mention also that our scoring system already rewards projects that have previously not even been funded, but been presented to us before. So there's points that they get if they've shown up before. There's something built in for this already. So I don't think we want to, as a matter of practice, simply put stuff in because it's already been funded. So I would suggest, I'd actually do this, if it's in order, I'd do a motion that we start with a cutoff of 158, and that will make the Northside Greenway just miss. I absolutely agree that that should be in, though I think we should be careful not to use this external matrix and say, well, it scored high on the matrix. Equity is a huge portion of the points that these projects already got. So, it's fallen where it's fallen, but the reality is, I think Robert misspoke. It looks to me, at least according to the spreadsheet, that this was funded last year. That's what it says here. Prior funding, it was funded in 2026. They're now asking for funds again in that same year, 2026, and the request is dropped from 2.5 million to 2 million. If we use 158, it misses by 0.2. That's just not even that's false precision right there. I think absolutely belongs in, and I think we can move on from there. So if that's in order, that's a motion. If not, I'll wait.
I would like to ask the member to wait until member Dan McConnell. We had the 4 people interested in asking questions about the staff recommendation. I will recognize John after Dan.
Justin,
Dan?
can you just explain to me, sorry, can someone just explain to me what's going on with Bridge 9? So we did step 1.7 last year. We're just taking a year off under this proposal. Is that right?
Here, let me pull up the current year funding request. Yeah, so the current year's funding request is for just years 2023 through 2027. And if it helps, I can pull up the CBR if they have provided additional detail on the 2022 year. I just don't have at my fingertips whether they're sitting on appropriation or not for Bridge 9.
Got it. I think there are multiple aspects to that project, and it's maybe a pet peeve of mine. The thing is ridiculously expensive. And I also think the U of M should pony up, basically connects their 2 campuses. If they want to have this bridge for people to bike across campus, they should help us pay for it. We shouldn't have to bear the whole cost. So
yeah,
I would be in favor of,
Okay, thank you.
of not funding it.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, so then, was there any last comment, Robert, on this?
Yeah, so I did want to
report.
So John's correction is correct. We've included projects that had funding in 2021 and 2022. Those were the balanced years of the CIP. 23 through 26 saw a substantial change between CLIC's recommendation and what was finally adopted last year, and so staff are not automatically including projects that had funding in the out years for those projects. So Northside Greenway, for example, is not automatically being included by staff just based on that recommendation. And then I think if you look at a number of paving projects, that had funding in the out years, for example, 35th Street, Nicollet Ave, it had funding programmed for 2026, but staff are not necessarily recommending it. We really are just focusing on the upcoming 2022 year and what already has programming there. Projects with programming in 2026 are still, I think, to staff's view, not necessarily going into the ground and not in heavy design work, and so wouldn't constitute abandoning a project that's already been communicated to the public, that people are already planning for in a real way. So we kind of left those out of the programming and left the scores to do their work.
Thank you, Robert. So
sorry.
now we're moving into 5B, and we're
Mr.
actually
Chair,
3 minutes
Chair.
ahead of schedule. So I'm
Mr. Chair, I'd
recognizing
like
John.
to raise a point of personal privilege.
Is that
Could I raise a point of personal
Steve
privilege?
Grant?
Yes,
Yes,
it
Steve.
is. I'm just asking, first of all, those of us who are dialing in by phone don't have a way to raise our hand, so I'm sorry for the interruption, but that's the only way we have. I would like to request that staff list, again, since we don't have these accessible in front of us, the projects that they're recommending being deferred, not just by number, but also by project name, as well as those that fall below the threshold in this recommendation. Because otherwise we're flying blind out here.
Yeah, that's good. Robert, will you just read those project names?
Yeah, I can do that.
Number and name.
Just to do a callback to Katie's recommendation, I think there's a couple ways to go through the staff recommendation. We could go through each block of projects. We could also kind of look at the steps that staff took and recommend those, because I think there are some overall comments on whether or not using this methodology of keeping projects that we know already have funding makes sense, or if you want to do that. But if it makes sense right now, I can kind of work through the different major programs Justin did organize the spreadsheet so that you have your bike ped projects listed in terms of the rankings. So it wouldn't be too bad to, I think, work through these. So I'll start with the top. Art in public places is funded under the bicycle and pedestrian program. The only projects that are not being recommended for funding are BP07 Northside Greenway and BP08, the public space program. Both of them scored below the 164 ranking as well as the 158 ranking from the other day. We already have a note today that BP07 does score high on the equity matrix. That's the bike ped program. These are the projects that using staff's methodology are not making it into the CIP. I'll step forward to the bridge program. So under the bridge program, there are only 2 projects that don't make it in. One is the Cedar Lake Road Bridge over Bassett Creek, and the other is Pillsbury Avenue over the Hennepin, the HC Railroad Authority. I can't remember what that stands for.
Hennepin County Regional Railroad Authority, the BP 133 and BP or BR 133, BR 135.
Right. So those are 2 projects that don't make it in. Their scores are 154.8 and 141.9 respectively. Under public grounds and facilities, let me see here. So we have 2 projects that are being recommended for exclusion right now. One is the PSD 24 solar project. We have alternate funding for that. The other is the farmers market project, which was not recommended for inclusion last year. It does score higher this year, but it does represent essentially a new request for funding. And staff have already noted, it based on our methodology, it seemed like this was a project that could be removed to meet net debt bonding totals, but we recognize there may be other priorities that would be worthy of including or excluding just based on this project. Right now it's excluded. PSD 16 farmers market improvements is being excluded. Other projects that are not making it in are fire station #1 renovations, the 911 facilities project and the radio improvement project, and PSD 15, the traffic maintenance facility improvement project. And then finally, PSD 23, the MPD training and wellness facility project is not being recommended for inclusion based on this method. Staff also made an adjustment to the MPD 04 project and pushed that project back to 2024. This project saw an increase in funding compared to last year's request. And just based on the circumstances around the request, we're recommending pushing it back to balance out the net debt bonding program. Moving on to the Municipal Building Commission, we have a few projects that are being recommended for exclusion. One is MBC 16, building-wide electrical upgrades. MBC 13, the 4th Street sidewalk and exterior light poles upgrade project. MBC 10, exterior improvements, and MBC 15, elevator 12 modernization, some of which are new projects this year. Moving down to the park board, really it's park PRK 04 athletic fields site improvements program that's being recommended for exclusion based on its scoring and based on the cutoff. It's scored 161.4. It's higher than the 158 cutoff that we looked at last time, lower than the 164 cutoff that staff used when we factored in a lot of the projects that are currently ongoing. And then we have, we have quite the list of paving projects that we've got in here. I think I could call them out pretty quickly, but if folks kind of see a better way of doing it, please, stop me and let me know. Right now, PBO 75 is not in due to the scoring cutoff.
Robert, could you give the name for each project, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, that PB 75, the Development Infrastructure Program project. And this, if I recall correctly, this project is typically not recommended or addressed by CLIC, but tends to make it into the final, the final CIP on consideration by the mayor's office.
Mhm.
I'm going to keep scrolling down to, okay, and so it's going to be largely, I think, a list of more recent projects that are not making it into the scoring cutoff. PV 160, First Ave South, PV 143 North Industrial, PV 161 3rd Street South. These are being listed in terms of their rankings by CLIC. PV 174 36th Street, Nicollet Avenue. PV 179 7th Street North. PV 169 38th Street. PV 165 35th Street, Nicollet Avenue to Chicago Avenue. PV 163 31st Street, Blaisdell to Bloomington. PV 166 2nd Street Northeast. PV 178 Johnson Street Northeast at I-35W. PV 157 33rd Avenue Northeast, Central to Stinson. PV 170 11th Avenue South, 8th Street to 24th. PV 175 38th Street, Park Ave to 23rd Ave. PV 150 1st Ave North, 10th Street to Washington Ave. PV 92 Technology Drive. Those are all projects that are being recommended for exclusion from the CIP. That brings us to, that's the end of the paving program right there. Stepping forward to sidewalks, all sidewalk projects. Yeah, all sidewalk projects are being recommended for inclusion. Looking at our traffic projects, all traffic projects are being recommended for inclusion as well. Advanced mobility, it's really the VZ001 Vision Zero program project is being recommended for inclusion. And then that brings
don't go with enterprise funds now. Let's stick to NDB.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's the end of the net debt bonding work.
Okay, so I think we addressed the point of personal privilege from member Steve Brandt. So we had in queue, John Bernstein, Eric Wan, and Dan McConnell. You're still showing with the hand raised.
So let me just ask first, Jeff, is a motion in order now?
Motion is in order.
Right, so I'm going to move that we use a cutoff of 158, and as a starting point that we fund the North Side Greenway, which is now showing on the screen, which misses that cutoff by 0.2 of a point, and then from there we can work our way up and get this thing completed. I personally don't think we should go with what was just recommended. The idea of taking out projects that are 30 points above the cutoff, and there are several other projects there where we're going to have to do some significant rewrites of comments, which that shouldn't necessarily stop us from doing funding. But if we put in MPD after the comment we made about the city not doing anything on MPD stuff until they figure out what they're doing on policing, we don't need to agree about what they ought to do on policing. We know they don't have a plan yet. Until they do, the idea of funding huge assets related to that doesn't make any sense, no matter what side of that you're on. So that's the motion.
So I understand the motion is moving the rating for funding be 158 plus include Northside Greenway project for the net debt bonds program.
And just to clarify, understanding that we won't be done, we're going to have to do some more stuff to get things balanced.
Of course. Is there a second to the motion?
Second, Brandt.
Okay, so we have second Brandt. So we have a motion properly made and seconded. Is there discussion? Eric, Juan, did you have your hand raised for this motion or something else?
No, I'm fine. Take my hand down.
Any other hands? I'm not seeing any other hands, so clerk will call the roll on this motion.
Hey, Jeff, maybe to be fair to everybody, let's have staff let's show what it does.
Of course. And then I'll recognize Katie Jones.
Oh, yeah, that was just going to be my ask.
Okay.
To make sure that they show it on the screen.
So what I'll do real quick.
And so we have to change that to 158.
I'm going to change that to 158, and then is the motion at the same time to clear out the recommendation to include all those projects that are in flight right now?
Yes, with the exception of Northside Greenway.
Got it.
I will just say, staff, I appreciate what you were trying to do. And also that you may just be a step ahead of us.
Just doing a little bit of busy work here to clear things out.
Yeah, Kazinka, while we're waiting.
I'm new to this process, so this may not feel right. I guess my one concern, I think I agree with the idea that we should be looking at this at a pretty different angle than what has been recommended here. And I am also a little concerned that, you know, it seems that at least some of these projects that have been recommended for continuation of funding because they are already underway may make sense for us to include. And if we go back down to 158 and then we need to start adding some of those in, we might just end up a little bit, it might be a little messy. And maybe that's fine. Maybe that works well with our process. But I also wonder if we should, through with looking at the ones that are score under but have been recommended for continuation of funding because they are already partly funded or partly underway, and make decisions about each of those, and then set a point cutoff threshold that helps us get closer to a balance. Does that make any sense? You can disregard this if it doesn't.
Can I respond to that, Jeff?
Yeah, that's the general process. Clerk will use, and I certainly can respond.
Matt, we need to set a cutoff to see what misses and what doesn't miss. So we kind of have to start with the cutoff. But your point is well taken, and I wasn't suggesting that anything that falls below the cutoff, too bad if it's already been funded. That's absolutely the next step if this motion passes, is to go through program by program with an eye on what the just misses and the just makes are, and where we are over or underfunded, and trying to figure out a way to, the reality is just gets pretty qualitative, even though it looks very quantitative, right? It's all about, we may have to skip down 2 projects and take one that's a slightly lower rated because it helps the year where we've got a funding problem, or, you know, because it's a good project and it's been funded in the past. There'll be lots of different things. It's a little bit messy, and that's just kind of how we do it. I mean, I haven't heard a better way, and I'd certainly be open to it if there is, but.
We have Scott Engel next.
Yeah, I have a comment that SWK2, sidewalk gaps, we earlier as CLIC approved a comment stating that we felt that the pause on funding, which is taking place in 2022 and 23, is inappropriate and funding needs to be put back in, I guess. Amity wrote that one and it was approved. And so whatever we're looking at here still has 0 funding in those front years, and it does start funding it in the later years. But I think that's a tweak that should be made either to the comment or preferably to this budget item.
And Jeff, I can respond to that.
All right, Katie.
Yeah, Scott, I agree. And I think that's the next kind of step in this process, kind of as John was saying, like if we can set a number for a cutoff, then after we set that, we kind of see what's in, what's out. And then we start making changes for recommending moving of budgets. So we can first do what projects are in, what projects are out, and then move money around. It seems to be the most streamlined, even though it seems convoluted right now.
Yeah, for new members, so the the click tradition is we have a rating number selected. We implement that. We take a look at the spreadsheet, in other words, the CIP. We then take other motions, and this is not deemed as a comprehensive motion that John has made. So we will not be like reconsidering and requiring 2/3 votes. Probably unless it's something very specific like not funding Northside Greenway. That I think, but there's a ability to tweak further changes with majority votes.
Yep.
So does anyone else have any questions? Otherwise, the motion was basically to put in the number 158 for funding, plus the Northside Greenway.
Yep.
Remove the
And if
prior
I-
staff recommendations from the view. John?
So I just want to point out to make sure everybody sees what that, Robert, you're done now, right?
Okay.
Yep.
So what this proposal puts us 2% over on the 6-year total, which is great. We're way over in 27. We may want to try to do some adjusting there, and we're under by a fair amount in 24 and 25, right below where Robert has it highlighted right now. So that's the important thing to take a look at. And now we can, if this passes, we can go in program by program and look to make some tweaks like the one Scott just identified and a few others to try to get that a little bit better balanced.
Thanks, John. I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so please help me if there are. Otherwise, the clerk will call the roll on this motion.
Thorbjorn Adam.
Aye.
Zachariah Aiden.
Aye.
Jonathan Ahn.
Aye.
Jocelyn Beard.
Aye.
John Bernstein.
Aye.
Steve Brandt.
Aye.
Luke Cunningham.
Aye.
Scott Engel.
Aye.
Amity Foster.
Aye.
Bill Graves.
Aye.
Ty Goodmanstead.
Aye.
Risa Husted.
Aye.
Katie Jones.
Aye.
Matt Kazinka.
Aye.
Erica Mouter. Dan McConnell. Jake McCormick.
Aye.
Dan Miller.
Aye.
George Montague.
Aye.
Beth Toso.
Aye.
Todd Schumann.
Aye.
Katrina Stratton.
Aye.
Eric Wan.
Aye.
Vice Chair Willie Bridges.
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Voting aye.
There are 24 ayes.
Adopted. Please raise hands for subsequent motions. So Scott Engel, you were just recognized earlier. Did you want to speak to your point? Scott, otherwise I'll recognize John.
So, thank you. I just want to make one point about what Scott pointed out. So I think I was one of the co-authors of the comment, so I totally support the idea of them funding sidewalks in 2022 and 2023, and we have a comment telling them to do that. That said, we don't necessarily have to put the funding in. We can do it either way. We don't have. I'm not arguing against doing that, but I would point out that we are already overfunded in 22 and 23. So to the extent possible, as we're doing this, it's great if we can kind of come up with things to take out to, if we're going to fund things that are where we're already over. So Robert, can I ask you to go to the top of the spreadsheet? And maybe we need to go through this and just look by program now that we've got a starting point. So Northside Greenway's in. There's nothing to do on Bike Ped, it seems to me. The next program down at 126 is pretty far away. So now you move to bridges. Bridge 9 is not in. There's some controversy around that. It's funded in previous years. We may want to think about that, but if we put it in, it's going to present some issues for us. It'll help in some years, actually. And you keep going down. Let's look at public grounds next. So this looks like, are those just hard copied in, that funding there? It looks like this is being counted when it shouldn't be, MPDO4, Robert.
Yes, you're right. Sorry, there was a funding shift that we had included in our recommendation. I'm just going to delete these out and see if I can update the formulas here.
So that changed our numbers up top. That was in. Yeah, so that solves the problem with.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
Yeah, that solves the problem. We're now underfunded in 22 and 23, so we can add in funding for sidewalks without putting us more over.
Thank you, John. So then I call on Scott Engel again.
I don't know if he's having technical difficulties, but I'm
Okay.
happy to make the motion
John.
on behalf.
All right, John.
So the motion, Katie or somebody help me out here because I don't remember what we said in the comment, but if we gave specific numbers, but the motion would be to restore funding in 2022 and 23. Actually, in 2022 through 2024, I guess we'd do it at that same $300,000 level.
Yep.
I
Exactly.
second that. Sorry, I couldn't get in.
Okay. So SWKO2, is that what we're looking at?
Correct.
SWKO2?
Robert, can you put that in before discussion so people can see what it does to the numbers? It's not going to change them much, actually.
Right.
It's a rounding error in the grand scheme of things.
So we have a motion and a second for funding SWK02 $300,000 for 2022 through 2024. And Amity.
No, I was just going to say, regarding the comment, we didn't have funding amount in it, so this is great.
Sorry, I couldn't make out your audio.
I think she was saying that our comment did not have specific funding amounts, but if I recall the language of the comment, it was implying that they ought to restore the funding that they were using, which is basically what we've done. And I see her and Scott nodding, so.
Okay. Very good. We have a motion made and properly seconded. Are there any other discussion points? Anything else, Amity?
Jeff, are you having us vote on these one by one?
I was, yes.
Okay.
If Amity doesn't have anything further, clerk will call the roll.
Jeff, can we do unanimous consent on this one?
Let me ask Justin.
Amity hand is up.
He's waving no.
It's not.
Now it's down.
I can't figure out how to unraise my hand, so.
I would love to do unanimous consent. The clerk's office has said previously that's frowned upon in the virtual environment. Alternative might be just to make a motion and then have amendments done as friendly amendments. I don't like friendly amendments, but I think we could argue about it in the time that it takes for a quick roll call. So let's try to be comprehensive in future motions. So clerk will call the roll on this one, and then members can be creative and put multiple actions into a single motion going forward.
So to clarify, motion to approve adding $300,000 in funding in years 22 through 24 for SWK 002. Thorbjorn Adam.
Aye.
Zachariah Aiden.
Aye.
Jonathan On.
Aye.
Jonathan On.
Aye.
Jocelyn Beard.
Aye.
John Bernstein.
Aye.
Steve Brandt. Steve Brandt, Luke Cunningham,
Aye.
Scott Engel,
Aye.
Amity Foster,
Aye.
Bill Graves,
Aye.
Kai Goodmanstead,
Aye.
Risa Husted,
Aye.
Katie Jones,
Aye.
Matt Kazinka,
Aye.
Erica Mounter, Dan McConnell, Jake McCormick,
Aye.
Dan Miller,
Aye.
George Montague,
Aye.
Beth Toso,
Aye.
Todd Schumann,
Aye.
Sabrina Stratton,
Aye.
Eric Wan,
Aye.
Vice Chair Willie Bridges,
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Voting aye.
There are 22 ayes.
Steve Brandt votes aye.
Motion
I was
adopted.
on mute.
Oh, Steve Brandt, 23.
So noted, 23 ayes.
Motion adopted.
Jeff, can I?
Let me suggest as chair that we have general statements about intent, and then we'll ask someone to move things comprehensively. So who was that, John?
Yeah, I don't. We need to be able to spreadsheet to do much. So it's just move back up to the bridge projects. I think that's kind of where we left off.
Okay.
And if we're going to do this comprehensively, maybe we just go through program by program and start doing stuff, and then see how it balances and take a vote.
Katie's got her hands up.
Katie.
Yes, so I intend to move back in the public space program. So this is a new project, so that's why I think it scored low. That's otherwise it would have had, the historical points. But it's also not an expensive program, and so that's another reason why it's kind of, again, a rounding error, but I think could provide a lot of value and experimentation and piloting for more public space, complete streets type initiatives. So when we go
And
to
the
put
years
a
and the
bracket,
amounts?
it was, I believe, 250,000. Sorry, between 24 and 27. So put that in the hopper or basket of things to move all together when we're ready.
That's BP 008, $250,000 from 2024 to 2027 annually. Next, John.
Yeah, let's put Bridge 9 in. I want to see what that does to the numbers.
John.
Can you hear me? I asked him to put Bridge 9 in, which he just did, just to see what that does to the numbers. I know that not everybody agrees with this project. It is previously funded. In general, it helps. It hurts in the out years. It helps us in the near-term years. I want us to come up with a resolution that's not controversial, so that's why I'm sort of treading lightly around this one.
I have a question from Neil.
Yeah, as a note, I was looking this project up, but it looks like they still have about 1.1 million in unspent bonds as of December of last year. So I don't know if that's why they haven't programmed anything for 22 or 23, but I just want to put that out there.
Can you explain?
So John, your BR 134 Bridge 9 program?
Yeah, here's a suggestion. We do this sometimes. The out years are where we really have a problem. What if we were to fund Bridge 9 but cut the funding in the out year by maybe 2 million or something? It's a long way out. We don't know exactly what's going to happen at this point. No, sorry, 2027, okay. Not 26, 27.
2 million in 2027. I'll recognize Dan and then Eric.
I'd like to sell this to you for $1. Get our money back.
Thank you, Dan. Eric, then Neil.
Yeah, point of clarification here. When you say unspent bonds, you really don't spend bonds. Bonds is a ceiling on borrowing. So they continue to carry that balance, the ability to borrow against the ceiling we give them?
Yeah, the correct language would be authorized but not issued bonds.
Right. So they have a lot of money that they can borrow. They've got credit that they can use for the next few years. They don't really need this since they're carrying all those balances.
Well, it's only $1 million on a $16 million project, though.
Yeah, I don't know what else is there from prior years. We're just talking about what's left in the ceiling on their debt from last year. If that makes any sense. I mean, I think this concept carries across many of these projects, where if there's any backlog, what they're doing is they're eating into this year's ability to borrow when they're not even using what they were given in prior years.
Yeah.
Is that correct, Robert?
Right. I think I would echo that. For this project in particular, I think we had that question of why we didn't see a funding request for 2022, and it sounds like we can infer that the $1.9 million in authorized but unissued bonds are planned to be utilized either for work this year or in 22, possibly both, to start getting this project or to make progress on this project. And the project is now asking for additional authorizations for 23 through 27. Right now, what we have is we're showing that this project is being included, and we're showing a $2 million reduction from what the department has requested for 2027 for the purposes of balancing the program.
Eric, your point is fair, but I think we should be careful too. There's different reasons why they're behind, and particularly coming out of the pandemic, it could just be a catch-up thing, and oftentimes they're able to get it caught up quite quickly. It's when projects are perennially have these huge unspent balances or authorized but not issued bonds.
I guess I agree with you, John. For me, it's when they're asking for more when they can't. It's going to the buffet and overloading your plate, and you know you're not going to finish it, and it's just going to go to waste. It just prevents other projects from being funded.
Right, but I don't think it's the case on this one. From what and the fact that they're not making requests in 22.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you. I got the answer.
Dan's got his hand up.
Anything further from Dan as John is up? Anything further in this program area?
Why don't we keep scrolling down? If other people want to chime in, that's fine, but let's see if we can just keep down and make this a big motion.
Let's go to the next area then.
All right, so the next area is going to be the public grounds and facilities. And so right now what we're showing is included using the 158 cutoff is fire station number 11, farmers market improvements, and fire station number 1.
Scroll over further. We need to be able to see what the funding request is to see how it's going to help in certain years or hurt.
Sure. A lot of these are 2022 and 2023 funding requests. Although I can say that MPD training and wellness is 25 through 27, and 4th Police Precinct is 24 through 26. Fire station number 19 is also 24 through 25.
Anybody have any strong feelings about the near cutoff ones? That's 911 and radio improvements are the two that miss. They're both near-term funding.
Yeah, I was thinking in particular about the 911 because, I mean, wasn't that part of that was in the 3rd precinct? And so that there's a need to shore that up.
Willie Bridges.
Willie, you're on mute.
I'd agree with what Katie was saying earlier about the third 911, and also there's monies coming into the police departments to do something from the COVID. That was just announced this morning. So I don't know how that's all going to work, but all cities will be getting more money for the police department. But I agree with support what Katie's saying.
Robert, can you put 911 in and show us what the numbers do?
I'll also say, so 911 is, as my understanding, is separate from the police in terms of its structure.
It is, yeah.
That puts us in pretty good shape in 22 and 23. Let's keep moving. Matt has his hand up.
So we're talking about moving funding for 911 and radio improvements, or not radio?
Not radio at this point, but Matt has his hand up.
Okay, Matt.
I guess, I think the comments we've authored here around policy around funding police related things right now, I think we should leave all of those off, though I do think, as Katie mentioned, 911 is separate, and I agree with putting that in here. I guess the other one on this list that I'm slightly compelled by is the City Hall one, but it does rank rather lowly. I just wonder if that is one where, because work is still happening, if it would really mess with the completion of that building to not include the City Hall and new public sector building on this in the transition that's happening with the city right now. Would that be an issue, or are things going to go okay with that transition to the new building without these funds?
John?
Yeah, actually, good catch, Matt, and I agree with you. I'm not sure why this scored so low. In my view, it's a good project in terms of it. The reality is it saves the city money, whether you like the building or don't like the building. Over the long haul, it saves the city money. Their process around this stunk, right? They basically excluded it from Click back in 2018, and they should not have done that. But that's water under the bridge. We've made a comment and told them that, this one does fall 20 points below our ranking, but to me, they're going to do this one, which is not necessarily a reason for us to recommend it if we don't think it's a good project. For me personally, despite the newspaper article talking about cost overruns, I can't make sense of that, because their ask for us relative to previous years has gone down, not up.
Katie Jones?
Yeah, just on that project, I'm sort of confused as to what the additional money would be needed for in, 2023 and 2024?
For what it's worth, according to the Star Tribune article, Jacob Fry was quoted in the article as basically saying that some of the quote cost overruns, which I'm assuming this must be that sort of thing, is about improving the carbon footprint of the building, adding solar panels, things that were not initially in the plan. That's what the quote is in the Star Tribune article. How accurate that is, I don't know. That's the only information I have on it.
Okay, yeah, because I just checked the CBR and it's not very descriptive.
Yeah, and if you remember, there were two major components to this project. It's the new public service building and the City Hall portion of the improvements. The new public service building is stood up now. And what we're looking at is the additional costs of restacking and reorganizing staff within City Hall and making those improvements. And that's kind of separate from how we've done improvements in the past in partnership with the Municipal Building Commission. These are entirely city-borne costs.
Okay, that makes sense. I'd forgot about the City Hall part.
Okay, let's go to Katrina.
Katrina. Can you hear me? Okay, so they're going to do this anyway, so why don't we just put it in the budget so it takes the money out of there? Because they are going to do this for I mean, they need to do this, whether we suggest they do it or not. So putting the money aside for that to happen just shows us how much money we're going to have, truly have money left to deal with.
John?
So I think we should put this in, but I don't agree with that approach. I think it's important that this is not the project, but if there's a project that we know they're going to put the money in for, but we don't agree, we should keep the money out, despite the fact that, you know, that there's some practical issues around that. I think it's important that we convey that message to them. Again, I'm not saying that about this project. I'm just broadly speaking.
I'm having connectivity trouble. Katrina?
Sorry, I forgot to put my hand down.
Is Katrina? Katrina?
She has a hand down, Jeff.
Let's keep moving down. We've got this one in for now. Strikes me that under NBC, 4th Street probably belongs in. That one barely misses. And we made a comment on that one.
I'll also note that it's not a lot of money.
Right.
And won't that be happening in conjunction with the 4th Street reconstruction?
I think so. I don't know how people feel about the next NBC one down, safety improvements. It's interesting that that one doesn't rank higher, but it is what it is. It's at 151.
Can we scroll down? Okay.
You look at Park Board.
So it looks like all Park Board projects are included using the 158 cutoff.
And quick question, Robert, all of these, I mean, the way the parks have done this budgeting is they're asking for exactly what they've been allocated for in the parks funding, right?
Yes, that's true.
I have my hand up, but I'll just.
John?
Yeah, I know you're having
John?
technical issues. Can you hear me, Jeff?
I can hear you.
So I was going to
Yes.
raise the same point Katie just did. I think we should author a comment yet again that tells the park board that this is not good budgeting, that they need to bring to us more than the exact amount that they're allotted. Put that out there. Maybe I'll draft something and get it circulated before the next meetings. But hopefully it's not controversial and can be passed very quickly.
Sounds good to me.
Sorry, John, I didn't hear that. My connection went in and out.
Robert, can you scroll down beyond park?
Sure. So we're moving into street paving projects.
So just for the record, ignore PBO 75. That's one we didn't rate. That's why it has only 30. It gets 35 points because it's been an ask before, but we don't rate that one. So that's why it's so low.
So I'm just going to scroll through until I get to the first project that drops off here. That's the downtown east paving.
So here's where I would respectfully suggest that since these point totals there's very little differentiation, this is where we can start to pick and choose to put stuff in that helps in the specific years that we need, because there isn't much difference on the ratings on these. So we're under in 25 and over in every other year. Sorry, under in 24 and 25 and over in every other year. So can you scroll down and look for ones that have big asks in 24 and 25?
Or specifically for streets, if we're over in a couple of other years, should we be moving or ask them to move?
Yeah, we could do that too, for sure. I just saw 178 of asking what in 2024, so that's a possible one. But fair point, Katie. The other way we can do this is just to move some of the money around a little bit. To be a little bit careful about that, because if we move stuff up too much, they may not have the capacity to actually do that.
Mm-hmm.
You've got too much of downtown streets torn up all over the place. So who knows what they're going to start.
And you ruffle Willie's feathers. Don't want to add to that.
Can we try putting 178 in and see what that does? It looked like it would help specifically in 24, which we need.
I'm sorry, John, can I get that again?
I think it was PV 178. It was one of the ones below the cutoff. It's Johnson Street North that had, and the ask was 2024, which is where we're underfunded. Yeah, 178. Let's put that one in and see what it does. Helps a little, by quite a bit.
The next one maybe is PV 150 that has quite a bit of municipal state aid. It's lower rated though.
So that brought down 25, right? Can you scroll over to the request on that one? Yeah, that brought down 25. Hurt 26 a little bit. I don't know how everybody else feels. I think if we can get these plus or minus 5%, that's good enough. Jeff, Matt has his hand up.
Matt Kazinka.
Yeah, I also looking at this, I see PV 142 Downtown East Paving to be a project that is already underway, has already started construction this year and has some remaining for 2022. So that feels like an important one to include, and it's just under the cutoff.
Where was that? 142?
That is PV 142 Downtown East Paving.
It's going to hurt 22, so we're going to have to find something to pull out, but you're there.
What was the outcome on PV 178?
We added that in. It took down the underfunding in 2024 from minus 17 to minus 15. But we still have, we're underfunded by $8 million that year and $11 million in 25, which is quite a bit. And we're overfunded now by $8 million in 22. So we either need to push some projects out or defund something.
Matt?
Robert, can you scroll over to the funding request so we can see the years?
Sure.
Go up the other way. Let's see if we can find some stuff to push out from 2022 that's already in. I don't think we want to mess with 38th in Chicago. That's a pretty important one.
What about the bigger programs like concrete, like repaving? Since those are bigger buckets.
Robert, go back, please. Go back to where the 22, just a little further down. Keep going down.
Oh,
right
sure.
Center,
here.
Center, a conference ID.
131, Katie, maybe?
I didn't see any bonds in that one, in that year. Or maybe I'm looking in the wrong place.
Oh, there are no bonds there.
But there are in the concrete one, which is 108.
Okay, let's go up. And 56 as well. Well, and conveniently, 108 does not have them in 23 or 24.
Organizer, press star now.
What if we push those bonds to 24? That's the year we're underfunded.
Sounds good to me.
And to be clear, so we'd be pushing these bonds from PV 108 out to 2024.
Right. And
Okay.
I don't think we should do this, but what they can do is take that transfer from the general fund from 24 and move it back to 22.
Hey, Jeff, you want to mute yourself?
Sorry, to be clear, we would move the bonds issued from PV 108 out to 2024. And then, because I remember this comment coming up in the past, this is really close to a year when some or a large portion of this work may be programmed. I'm less familiar with how Concrete Streets is working because it is an ongoing program. But is that a question or consideration for the committee as we make this proposed move?
My assumption is that they can take one of those other sources and move it back to 22, like transfer from the general fund. But I don't think we should do that for them. I think we should let them do that, because that's just information we don't have. We just need to focus on net debt bonds.
Matt
sorry.
has his hand raised.
Okay. Yeah, I'm wondering, are there others? I guess this question of how do we get 2022 balanced out obviously is an important one. I'm wondering if there are other sections we need to go through before we like fine tune the numbers, or have we already gone past most of the things that have bonding implications? Because I also would like to see, are there other options better than moving around the Concrete Streets program? But I haven't looked at this very extensively yet.
I do want to raise timely for the group, Water 18 was a subject of some discussion. I think there's some uncertainty around it, but it does have net debt bonds associated with that project. And let me pull up the score just to be clear what we're talking about with this one.
Matt, to answer your question, I think we do need to go through the rest of it, but the reality is, we tend to put in, not take out. So addressing this, paving tends to be an area where it's easier to make these changes, especially in a program.
How about if we recap the items we have made statements of intent on to this point?
Okay.
And look at those. I've been having audio difficulties, but I think we have 5 items.
All right, let me work through them really quickly. We have BP 008, which is being recommended for inclusion. It's an additional $250,000 a year starting in 2024. That's the public space program, by the way. BR 134 Bridge 9 program is being recommended for inclusion with a $2 million cut to the 2027 requested funding level. The 911 facility project is being recommended for inclusion in 2022 and 2023, which comports with the years of requested funding. PSD 20 City Hall and new public service building project is being recommended for inclusion, despite being below the cutoff. MBC 13, the 4th Street Sidewalk Exterior Improvements Project for $150,000 recommended for inclusion in 2022. And then Concrete Streets Rehabilitation, we're recommending pushing the funding for 2022 out to 2024 for the net debt bonds. I'm going to scroll through and just confirm that I don't have any additional changes. I'm going to unhighlight this one thing that I've got up on the screen right now because this is a holdout from the staff recommendation.
What about, I see Matt Kazinka.
Sorry, that was my hand was still up. I'll take it down.
Okay.
I've got downtown east paving, PV 142 recommended for inclusion as well. PV 178, Johnson Street, also recommended for inclusion. Then PV 150, recommended for inclusion.
What years?
PV 150 is years 2025 and 2026. PV 178 Johnson Street is 2024. PV 142 is in 2022. PV 142 downtown east paving is in 2022.
Katie Jones?
Yeah, I think it was it PV 150? No, that doesn't exist. Or does it exist? The one that
Yes, PV
Robert,
one,
that you had, yeah, we said we had just added back in. Can someone remind me the rationale to add that back in?
big numbers in 2025 when we're really underfunded.
Ah, okay.
And it's north side. Katie? What about the PV 142? Didn't I hear someone say that needed to move out of 2022? Or not?
Robert, we're really testing your Excel skills today.
That's right, just a lot of scrolling. So it's the idea that PV 142 would be bumped out of the 2022 year. Is that the idea? I have it marked for inclusion only right now. That's it.
I thought I heard that comment. I just was trying to clarify.
So important to note on 142 that it's not using net debt bonds, so it has no impact on what we're doing here.
Okay.
So to the extent that it's an underway project that we think ought to fund it, we can do that, and it has no impact on our what we're trying to balance here.
City general fund?
Yeah, it's using general fund money.
Okay, well, how about if Robert did read over the items? So we had PV 178, 911, PSD 20, MBC 13, concrete streets, PV 178, PV 150, PV 142. So to get part of the way there, I think we should have a motion in a second and then do a roll call on this in that it's 1:35 p.m.
Sure, second.
Okay.
And if we're going to do that, then let's pick up, to Matt's point, let's pick up after this motion, if this passes, right below paving, because we haven't looked at those yet.
Okay. Sounds good. So we have a motion properly made and seconded. Any further comments? Any hands? Not seeing any?
I have a comment. I wondered if somebody could make the case for the 911 project. I found nothing in the CBR that explained to me how this was going to result in an improvement.
Let's see. Anyone?
Yeah, so I found that in the CBR, it says that it's no longer adequate for today's 911 operations. So the above ground location is not, wait. They want to make it above ground because right now it's susceptible to flooding. Increase handicap accessibility, so pregnant mothers accommodations, but then also just their normal day-to-day things of IT, call taking, dispatch.
They are below ground, and all those things that Katie said. I've been down there several times. Accessibility is not there, and they definitely need to be improved. They are in the barrels of City Hall. Sometimes it gets damp, and they need to do something with that 911. So it really needs improvement, that's for sure.
All right, I think members addressed Steve's question. So
oh, sorry, one more thing there. So they're planning to relocate, and the location is yet to be determined. And so that may be a part of the equation as to the higher cost.
Yeah, because they wanted to move into the new building, but they got to stay where they're at. That's for now. So
I see. Well, I was looking at a diagram that was in the report that didn't seem to show much change. That's why I was confused. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve. I don't see any other hands. We've discussed this, so the clerk can call the roll on the motion.
All right, Thorbjorn Adam.
Aye.
Zachariah Aiden.
Aye.
Jonathan Ahn.
Aye.
Beard.
Aye.
John Bernstein.
Aye.
Steve Brandt.
Abstain.
James Brown. James Brown. Luke Cunningham.
Aye.
Engel. Scott Engel. Amity Foster. Amity Foster. Eamon Gallagher. Gotcha. Eamon Gallagher. Bill Graves.
Aye.
Kai Guggenstead.
Aye.
William Gullickson. William Gullickson. Risa Hustad.
Aye.
E. Jones.
Aye.
Pat Kazinka.
Aye.
Richard LaRoe. Richard LaRoe. Erica Mouter. Erica Mouter. Dan McConnell. Dan McConnell. Jake McCormick.
Aye.
Ken Miller.
Aye.
Rose Montague.
Aye.
Beth Toso.
Aye.
Schumann. Todd Schumann. Katrina Stratton.
Aye.
On.
Aye.
Vice Chair Willie Bridges.
Aye. Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Aye.
That's 20 ayes and 1 abstention.
Motion carried. We'll continue working on the net debt bonds, and then noting that the agenda did call for 2 optional items, general comments and/or enterprise funds at 145, but if there's unanimous consent, we'll just continue with the net debt bonds and complete this meeting, try to complete that work. John?
So I don't know how productive we're going to be below here. I think most of this, the next stuff is all fully funded. So unless we're going to, what we need to focus on is getting more funding in 2025, less funding in 26 and 27. Those are the biggest out of balance places at this point. We may need to go back to paving, but we should look below paving first. Just so people know, fleet is not net debt bonds, and that's enterprise, so we're not dealing with that now. And we need to focus on where it says bonds issued, because that's net debt bonds. If it's using other funding sources, it's not going to change anything. With the lowest ranked traffic project at 181, that doesn't seem like an area where we want to defund anything, possibly move stuff around. But again, I'd be more inclined to do that in paving, where there's projects that are closer to the cusp of our cutoff.
And John, the water projects, those are using water bonds, which are separate from net debt bonds. Correct?
Right. To Robert's point, we should look at water 18, because that uses net debt bonds in quite a few. Just so people know, it's a building, so it uses both sources. So you can, but it's not using them in the years that matter for us. So I don't know that we mess with it. Robert, can you go to that and leave it on screen? Water 18. Yeah. So just so people see, it's using bonds in 21, 22, and oh, sorry, that's prior. 22 and 23. So it's a highly rated project at 194. Those are not the years where we have big problems. So I would suggest we not mess with that at this point.
I'm going to back up to the mix of net debt bond funded projects. Paving certainly had a number of projects that weren't in there, and quite a few that are included. Public grounds and facilities, there's always a lot of decision making in those projects. MBC.
To my mind, purely because of the number of projects, paving is where we ought to focus our efforts. I think that's where we can be most effective. But I'm certainly open to other suggestions if people want to chime in.
John?
Yes, Jeff? Maybe let's scroll down and look for something that's got net right there. Net debt bonds in 2025. Further down.
John, you had your hands up. That's why I called, don't you?
Recognize Matt Bozinko.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could for a second just look at the figure out what exactly our goals are, because I know that we're under in 24 and 25, and we're over in 2022 and 27. Robert, would you be able to bring the screen to kind of the overview? Because I'm wondering, should our process, do we need to focus on adding or cutting or just shifting things around in the years? I see that our total is 9% above NDB, so do we need to overall cut versus adding new things? And are there any, I seem to remember that it's important that the 2022 we get close to zero and the total we get close to zero. How important is it overall to get all of these close to zero?
I mentioned it earlier, to my mind, if we get these within roughly 5% or even single digit, for the most part, that's probably good enough. It would be better if we had the near-term years narrower margins than the out years. I think 27 in particular, if that's way over, that's probably okay as long as the overall balance is, because that's sort of the, for lack of a better way to put it, sort of throwing everything out there that, might be coming to the pike.
So I'm sorry, I guess my question maybe more succinctly is, with us at total at kind of 9% over net debt to bonds, should we add anything else in, or should we mostly focus on where we can shift money between years to get to a balance?
To my mind, go ahead, Katie.
I was going to say, my strategy was initially to look at 2022 and see what we could shift out of it into, 24, 25.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think we need to be careful about doing too much shifting of stuff from 27 and 26 into 25, because that might be unrealistic from a capacity standpoint for the city. So there's no great clean answer to your question, Matt. It's a fair point. This is the messy sausage making we're in the midst of right now, basically. If we can find a project that's got funding in 26 and 27 that we like and we think they ought to move up, great, let's do that, because that's the easiest way to solve this.
Well, and I mean, to the point of 26 and 27, they kind of don't matter as much, but 22 does.
Right.
I would say let's focus our efforts on what might be able to move. I was looking at MBC, like, are there maybe MBC projects that could potentially move? They have a hard time doing a number of projects at once anyway. They've got a small staff.
What if we fund, to that point, what if we fund safety improvements, but tell them to fund it in 24 and 25? Let's just move the ask for 22 and 23 and add it on to 24 and 25. That will help.
Well, but that doesn't help our overall, because we're overall up.
No,
right?
It won't help the overall, but it will help those individual years. And then once we do that, we can start looking at what we can cut.
Cutting's always harder, though.
Well, let me propose this, Robert. Will you just do what I suggested? Not this, just to look at it, and then maybe on top of that, Katie, we can cut back those same numbers a little bit.
And remember, MBC works in stages, but that says non-stage work areas.
So we're going to move all of the move 2022 to 2024 and 2023 to 2025, add it on to what's already there. Let's see what that does, and then we can look at possibly cutting it back as well.
I'm just thinking that overall makes it harder. Like we're just going to have to cut more paving if we do that. Like it's easier to move a paving project.
Well, we could cut safety improvements back too. That's what I'm suggesting on top of that. That's not quite what I meant to do. I was not saying to shift everything. I was going to keep everything in 24 and 25. So that what you move to 26 goes to 24 in addition to what's already there. And same, what's in 27 goes to 25 in addition to what's already there. Sorry, I wasn't clear on that. Why does that look like it didn't change things very much in 22 and 23? We're at 10% over. That should have come down.
Oh, the project wasn't included in the first place, right?
Oh, right. So this didn't help anything. All this did was put us more out of whack. Maybe that's what you guys were trying to do.
Yes.
Sorry.
I think it didn't help.
Yep, you guys are right. So we should do that with MBC projects that are already included.
Yes, I think that would make more sense.
So what
we
if
have 5 million that we have to move in total. So if we move life safety improvements.
Yeah, but what if we spread that out over 3 years? Give them $1 million, roughly $1 million each year. Well, that doesn't do anything for 2023. It's 24 and 25 we need to worry about.
Right.
What if we just...
Did we include, so sorry, I'm now moving down to paving. Did we include 38th in Chicago as a paving project?
I think we did. Let's go down and look. And I think that's a lot of 2022 funding, but that, to me, that's one we probably just need to leave alone. That's going to get controversial. That's, people have strong feelings about it.
Chicago, yeah.
And it's not, most of it's not net debt bonds anyway.
Oh, it's not. Okay. I was just wondering if like the city was even ready for that.
I think that's a fair question, but
They're working on it. The community's working on it in 38th in Chicago, and everybody working on 38th in Chicago.
for it to help, we'd have to move it 2 years, and I think that's going to be controversial. So let's just let it be.
Leave it alone.
Okay.
So to you guys' point, we need to look at other stuff that's funded in paving that we can move out into those 24 and 25 years or back. Whoa, there was a big one you went by that had 7 million in net debt bonds. Can you scroll up a little bit, Robert? Sorry, other way, down.
Down.
Right there. 126 has got $7 million in net debt bonds in 22. We could shift
CV1.
That's not being moved. Like.
Right.
Are they really going to use that funding in 2022? I'm not.
Yeah.
You're sure?
That project is well on its way to be constructed next year.
Okay, but look at the other years. They've got between city general fund and stormwater transfer fund, they've got 3 million in 2023. What if we shift that to 2020? Well, let them shift that, and we move some of the net debt bonds out.
On that area there already, I know they got it all torn up around that area, and they've been working in that area.
Right.
John
The
just
streets are
suggesting funding shift.
closed. The
Money
streets are
shift.
closed over there.
What did you say, Jeff?
John was just suggesting moving the money around, not using some of the other alternative transfer funds, right? Offsetting net debt bonds.
That's the kind of what I mean.
Yeah.
He's got a fair point. We can't just delay it when they're underway on it, but if there's money they can shift back if we take out the amount that they can move back, the problem is we need to move it out to 2024 to help us, and they have it in 2023.
Okay.
Should we scroll
Well,
up?
it's 1:53 p.m., gentlemen and members. So,
well, we can keep working on this.
Looks like committee may want to noodle this and bring in something at the beginning of the next meeting.
I was going to propose that I, with Katie's help, if she's interested, in anybody else that wants to be a part of it, we could try to come up with something where we clearly delineate this is what's been passed so far, so we clearly delineate any changes to this and try to get something that's a little bit better balanced. Happy to work with anybody that would like to do that before our meeting so that we can basically just do a very brief presentation of what we're proposing and then take a vote on it and allow people to break stuff out if they don't agree, etc. So that it's not ramming anything through. So in other words,
do you want to have the other task force chairs and co-chairs? That way you'll be balanced.
I think we should open it up to anybody who'd like to be a part of that, without getting it to be too big a group. And with the understanding that if we make 10 proposals, if you like 9 of them, an option will be to break out the one that you don't like, and we'll vote on the 9 and then deal with the one that people don't like.
Katrina.
Is there any way we could have this a couple days beforehand so we can review it?
Can certainly try. It's just a matter of people's schedules and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's a lot of information to all of a sudden have at your fingertips when it's new.
Okay, so we have John, Katie. I will volunteer to help. Quickly, any other volunteers so we can get this wrapped up?
Is Eric available?
Yep, I'll be there.
Okay.
Okay.
That's 4.
Eric.
Matt's got his hand up.
Anyone else? Matt?
I'd be happy to try to participate, if that's okay.
Okay, 5 there, 5. So that's 5. That's good.
Sounds good.
Anybody who's been quiet today that has opinions or wants a chance to contribute, please step up. And if you want to do it after the fact, just email somebody.
Especially if you're an Excel guru.
Okay. Well, thanks, quick members. So we have basically 4 minutes left. Just to recap then, for our staff will recap the changes, send out a new spreadsheet. We still have a couple of other additional motions that were sort of left on the table. No certainty for not being laid over. And then next week we'll have to begin and finish work on the enterprise funds.
Can I
wrap up net debt bonds?
Can I propose that the same group that does this work on the net debt bonds do the same on enterprise funds? Come to the committee with a recommendation that they can vote on?
If there's no objection. Not hearing any, I guess so.
And I would suggest if we do that, that we get it, if at all possible, 2 days to the members before we meet, so that we're not spinning our wheels on this, but get in there a couple of days.
Yeah, get it a couple of days. It's really important, John. I think that.
One other thing.
I apologize to members that we didn't have the other recommendation earlier.
One other point on that.
Okay, so,
Jeff,
John.
Sorry, just really quickly. I did get this pro forma sheet from the water department via Robert. So either I'll send it out to everybody or I'll let Robert do that. But it's going to be a little more controversial this year. I think some of the rate increases, especially around water, are more significant than they've been in the past. So we're not going to tell them you ought to change the rates, but what we can do is not fund everything they want to fund.
Very good. Did any members have any final questions before we get into our wrap up? So remember, next week, June 30th, noon to 2 is our final regular scheduled meeting. I know that some members had questions about the cover letter. That's always been the chair of the committee writes that. Tony Hofstad, my predecessor, did so. I've done so. certainly will take input from members if they feel things are important. I always solicit questions from the executive committee about what should be the focus of the meeting with the mayor. And so any other members can send the same information. I want to thank all the members for their constructive work today. And John for sharing his financial acumen and expertise for working through these spreadsheets and others.
Katie.
Staff, any comments?
No, we'll share out the spreadsheet with all the updates that we have in here shortly, so the group can kind of pick it apart and return with additional recommendations next time.
Great, thanks, Robert. So
see you,
yeah,
Amanda.
with that, we've completed all items on the agenda, having deferred items 6 and 7. Next meeting is Wednesday, June 30, noon to 2 p.m. And we will be looking at any final general comments, finishing net debt bonds, finishing enterprise fund recommendations, and final wrap up preparatory to the 2021 quick report. I will ask members and staff if there are any other questions or matters to come before this meeting. Seeing no hands raised, if not,
Just
without
acknowledge,
objection,
Jeff, just acknowledge what
Pardon?
staff has done, that we appreciate them doing all the work. Getting
thank you,
us
staff. I
through
appreciate
this.
you're doing that. Thanks, Willie. Calling that out. If not, without objection, I'll declare this meeting adjourned. And again, our next meeting will be Wednesday, June 30th, 2021, noon to 2. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great week.